Think about someone you know, maybe even yourself at times, who's always looking for that next compliment, that next bit of approval from others. It's a constant reaching outwards, a searching for something to fill a void. And ironically, the more they seek that external validation, the more fragile their relationships often become. It's like a tightly wound spring. Any little pressure, any perceived slight, and snap, it's ready to break. But what if true, lasting connection wasn't about grasping outwards? What if it was about cultivating something within? Imagine, instead of that tight spring, a spring that's loosely coiled. It can absorb bumps, adapt to changes, connect in a way that's both strong and yielding. Or picture a single brittle branch, easily broken. Now imagine a reed bending in the wind, not resisting, but yielding. And now imagine that reed not just bending alone, but bending towards another reed, intertwining, creating a structure far stronger together than either could be apart. This might seem paradoxical, that the path to stronger bonds out there begins with a journey in here. But that's precisely what we'll be exploring through a Taoist lens. We've touched on Do before, that inherent virtue, that power that comes from being authentically you. It's not about striving to be something you're not. It's about expressing the unique nature that's already there. Think of a sculptor. A master sculptor doesn't fight the wood. They don't force it into a shape that goes against its grain. They study it. They understand it. They work with its inherent nature to reveal the beauty within. Self-love, in a Taoist sense, is very much the same. It's about recognizing and accepting your own grain, your quirks, your imperfections, even the things you might consider flaws. It is embracing all that comprises you. Think about the Japanese art of kintsugi. A broken bowl isn't discarded. Instead, its cracks are meticulously repaired with gold, highlighting those imperfections, making them part of the bowl's unique story, and in a way, enhancing its beauty and value. Or consider a musical instrument, a finely crafted guitar, a violin, a piano. It resonates most powerfully, produces its truest sound, when it's allowed to be what it is, when it's properly tuned to itself. It's not trying to sound like another instrument. It's embracing its own unique construction. That's D in action, that inner acceptance, that embracing of your authentic self, flaws and all. That's the wellspring from which genuine connection flows. Because how can you truly connect with another if you haven't first connected with yourself? Knowing others is intelligence, yes, but as the Tao Te Ching tells us, knowing yourself is true wisdom, mastering others is strength, mastering yourself is true power. And that mastery begins with acceptance. It is embracing that wholeness, that uncarved potential of you will allow you to find yourself. Let's delve into another core concept of Taoism, Pu. We've discussed Pu as the uncarved block, that original untouched state of potential, before we've been shaped and molded by external forces, societal expectations, or even our own self-imposed limitations. It's the essence of who we are before we start trying to be who we think we should be. Think about it in terms of relationships. How often do we find ourselves acting like social chameleons, shifting our personalities, our opinions, even our behaviors to fit in, to be liked, to be accepted? We become a polished, presented version, different for every audience. But that constant adapting, that constant performance, it's exhausting. And more importantly, it prevents genuine connection, because the person others are connecting with isn't the real you. True connection thrives on authenticity. Consider the difference between a handwritten letter, filled with personal thoughts and feelings, and a generic, mass-produced greeting card. Which one feels more meaningful? Which one carries a sense of genuine connection? The handwritten letter, of course, because it's an unfiltered expression of the sender. Or picture a jazz musician. When they're truly in the flow, improvising freely, they're not following a rigid script. They're expressing their Pu, their unique musical voice, in that very moment. It's raw, it's real, and it's captivating. Compare that to someone simply playing notes on a page, technically proficient perhaps, but lacking that spark of genuine expression. Even in the animal kingdom we see this. A wild animal behaving according to its instincts, its inherent nature, has a certain presence, a certain power. A domesticated animal, trained to suppress those instincts, may be obedient, but it often lacks that same vital energy. When we embrace our Pu, when we allow ourselves to be uncarved, unforced, we present ourselves authentically to the world. And that authenticity is the bedrock of deeper, more honest, and more fulfilling relationships. Trying to force ourselves into a mold, to be someone we're not, it's like carving the block against its grain. It weakens the wood, and it weakens the connection. So we've explored inner acceptance and authenticity. Now, let's see how this translates into our interactions with others. This brings us to Ziran, that beautiful Taoist concept of naturalness, spontaneity, being in tune with the flow of life. Remember, Ziran isn't about being passive. It's about acting in accordance with your true nature and the natural unfolding of events, without unnecessary force or contrivance. When we cultivate self-love, when we're comfortable in our own skin, we become more present, more responsive, more capable of Ziran in our relationships. We're not trying to control the interaction, to steer it in a particular direction, to force a connection. We're allowing it to unfold organically. Imagine two dancers perfectly in sync. They're not rigidly following a set choreography. They're listening to the music, responding to each other's movements, creating a beautiful, fluid dance that emerges in the moment. That's Ziran in action. Think about a truly engaging conversation. It doesn't feel forced or contrived. Topics flow effortlessly. There's a natural give and take, a sense of shared understanding that arises spontaneously. It's not about dominating the conversation or waiting for your turn to speak. It's about being present, listening deeply, and responding authentically. Or consider a high-performing team. Each member brings their unique skills and perspectives to the table, contributing in a way that complements the others. There's a synergy, a collaborative flow, where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It's not about individual egos competing for dominance. It's about working together harmoniously towards a common goal. Even in nature, we see the principle of Ziran at play. Think of a complex ecosystem, a forest, a coral reef. Countless species interact in a delicate, interdependent web, each playing its role, without any one species consciously trying to control the entire system. There's a natural balance, a dynamic equilibrium, that arises from the spontaneous interactions of all the elements. Self-love allows us to enter our relationships with that same sense of naturalness, that same trust in the unfolding process. We're not clinging, we're not forcing, we're flowing with the connection, allowing it to deepen and evolve in its own way. We've talked about flowing naturally, and that brings us to another key Taoist principle. Wu Wei. Often translated as non-action or effortless action, Wu Wei is frequently misunderstood. It's not about being passive or doing nothing. It's about acting in alignment with the Tao, with the natural flow of things, without unnecessary force, resistance, or striving. It's about knowing when to act and when to yield, when to speak, and when to listen. Self-love, that deep acceptance of ourselves, allows us to practice Wu Wei in our relationships. We're not trying to control the other person, to mold them into who we think they should be, or to force a particular outcome. We're offering our authentic selves, our D, our uncarved block, and allowing the relationship to unfold naturally, trusting in its own inherent wisdom. Think of a skilled negotiator. They don't win by dominating the conversation or imposing their will. They listen attentively. They understand the other person's perspective. They find common ground, and they work with the situation rather than against it. They achieve their goals through a kind of effortless influence, or consider a parent guiding their child. Instead of strict control and rigid rules, they offer gentle encouragement, creating space for the child to learn and grow at their own pace. They understand that true growth comes from within, not from external pressure. A martial artist, particularly one practicing a style like Tai Chi, embodies Wu Wei. They don't meet force with brute force. They yield, they redirect, they use their opponent's momentum against them. Their strength lies in their softness, their ability to adapt and flow. Even in the culinary arts, we see Wu Wei. A master chef understands the subtle nuances of each ingredient, the precise timing required to bring out its full flavor. They don't over-season, they don't overcook. They allow the natural flavors to develop and harmonize, creating a dish that is both simple and exquisite. This softness, this non-forcing approach, might seem counterintuitive in a world that often emphasizes striving and control. But in the Taoist view, it's surprisingly powerful. It's the power of water, which can carve canyons through rock over time, not through brute force, but through persistent, gentle flow. In relationships, Wu Wei, rooted in self-love, allows us to create connections that are strong, resilient, and deeply fulfilling not because we forced them to be, but because we allowed them to become. So how do we weave all of this together? How do we take these Taoist principles, Di, Pu, Ziren, and Wu Wei, and apply them to cultivate the kind of self-love that fosters stronger, more authentic connections? It's about cultivating inner harmony, which naturally radiates outwards. Here are some practical steps. First, practice self-compassion. This is directly linked to Di and Pu. Treat yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and forgiveness that you would offer a dear friend. When you stumble, when you make a mistake, don't beat yourself up. Acknowledge it, learn from it, and move forward with gentleness. Next, embrace imperfection. Remember Pu, the uncarved block? Your imperfections are part of your unique grain, part of what makes you, you. Don't try to hide them or erase them. Allow yourself to be authentic, flaws and all. This vulnerability is often the key to deeper connection. Third, practice mindfulness. This is where Ziren comes into play. Be fully present in your interactions. Put down your phone, turn off the distractions, and truly listen to the other person. Respond authentically, from your heart, not from a pre-programmed script. Fourth, let go of control. This is the essence of Wu Wei. Release the need to control others, to manipulate situations, or to force a particular outcome in your relationships. Trust in the natural unfolding of things. Allow the connection to evolve organically. And finally, set healthy boundaries. This is crucial for honoring your own Di, your own inherent worth and needs. It's not about being selfish. It's about recognizing your limits and communicating them clearly. Healthy boundaries allow for healthy interdependence, where both individuals can thrive without sacrificing their own well-being. These steps, taken consistently, are not just about improving your relationships with others. They're about cultivating a deeper, more loving relationship with yourself. And that, in the Taoist view, is the foundation for everything else. So the core message is this. Self-love, cultivated through the Taoist principles of Di, Pu, Ziren, and Wu Wei, isn't some abstract ideal. It's the very bedrock upon which stronger, more authentic, and more fulfilling relationships are built. By focusing on this inner cultivation, by accepting ourselves, embracing our imperfections, flowing naturally, and practicing non-forcing, we create a space for genuine connection to blossom. We attract healthier relationships, not by chasing them, but by becoming the kind of person who naturally radiates that kind of connection. But a question arises, a subtle paradox. We've talked about cultivating self-love, about finding that inner harmony. But what happens when we shift our focus, when we start actively chasing happiness, either in ourselves or in our relationships? We're often told that happiness is the key, the ultimate goal. But does this relentless pursuit, this striving for a constant state of bliss, actually bring us closer to the connection and fulfillment we crave? Or does it perhaps create a different kind of imbalance, a subtle form of resistance? Many of us operate under the assumption that happiness is the prerequisite for strong relationships. But what if the very act of striving for happiness, of constantly measuring ourselves against some ideal standard, creates a tension, a subtle pressure that prevents us from fully experiencing the present moment and connecting authentically with others? What if we are blocking the natural unfolding of the connection? What if the most powerful approach to happiness, paradoxically, isn't the pursuit but the avoidance of that pursuit? What if true, lasting happiness emerges not from chasing it, but from allowing it to arise naturally as a byproduct of living in alignment with the Tao? Join us in the next exploration, where we'll delve into the unexpected consequences of actively seeking happiness and how a Taoist perspective can offer a more balanced, a more fulfilling, and ultimately a more sustainable path, not just to happiness, but to a life rich in genuine connection and meaning.